Oh, oh yeah. There we go. Maybe that made it on the air.
That was a lovely beginning. You should edit that to the beginning.
Yeah, just a nice, cute start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in
Every
that
time-
culture where if you burp, it means we respect our podcast.
It was tasty and filling.
Compliments to the host. Well, yeah, we're going to be talking about just when you play a game and that feeling that you get that's like, I wonder what's going on in this place. So anyway, I have shared the pop-out chat. I think it was before you joined the TC, so I can just go ahead and pick that up.
I got the YouTube link up. So I can so it's all good.
Alrighty then. Well, I got everything here ready to go. And is there any things before we get started here?
I am grieving for BioWare. I don't know what happened to that video game company, but oh my goodness.
What's going on now besides Fallout sucking?
Oh no, BioWare made like some of my favorite video game franchises, Dragon Age and Mass Effect especially.
Mass Effect, yeah.
And they just released Anthem, and it is such a train wreck. I've been playing it, and it's unbelievable. This is a BioWare game.
Is it one that's like broken, or what kind of game? Like,
well, there's like, okay, so BioWare like makes like Mass Effect, like this fantastic story with characters that affected the storyline. That's gone. They're actually more. It takes longer to load the game than to actually play it. Apparently, you can get a level 1 weapon now that's more powerful than a masterworked level 25 gun. I mean, just it's so sad to see something fall apart like that. It's like,
Do you think there's any hope for it?
I hope. I spent. There better be. I spent $60 for the dang thing. There better be some hope.
I have not played the newest Mass Effect, and I'm pretty much just assuming I should avoid it in general.
Yeah, Andromeda was not good. Andromeda, had like some of the worst facial animations of any game I've seen in a while. I mean,
the last Mass Effect just dropped the M.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's pretty. But Carissa likes playing the Mass Effects, and she was watching me play and go, "Oh my goodness! Like the facial animations were better than like the first Mass Effect for the 360. What happened?" I went, "I don't know, honey, but I'm worried about Anthem." And then Anthem comes out, and she was like, "Yeah, you had right to be worried. I don't know if EA destroyed them or what, but first Fallout, now BioWare."
Have you seen anything from the Resident Evil 2 remake?
I've heard really good things.
I played a 30-minute demo of that. It is fantastic.
No, it looks
so
good. Unfortunately, I can't run it.
But I got around that by getting a used Xbox One for $150. That's how I'm getting around all this.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, though, like, it all looks good until they do close-ups of their faces, and then there's some freaky Uncanny Valley crap going on there for me.
Yeah. Well,
like, it's too close to human, but not quite there. So whenever I see them talking and look, I'm like, something about this is like tripping something in the back of my brain and freaking me out.
Yeah, remember that Final Fantasy movie that came out like a long time ago? And people were like freaking out, like, that looks so real, it looks not natural. I remember that. I was like, well, it kind of stunk anyway, even though it looked pretty. Okay. Anyway, I could rant on and on about Anthem, but I'd rather talk about board games right now because I'll just get myself wound up. That how I threw away $60 on a video game I could have spent on a cool board game I played Wednesday night instead.
Aww.
Well, you can always go back and play Fallout 76.
Yeah, there's always that.
Anthem, the board game.
Well, they're calling it. I think they're calling it Anthem 76 now. I think is the official meme for Anthem right now. I can always go back and play Destiny 2 and get wound up even more.
Nice.
Anyway, I guess we should talk about board games, huh?
Sure. Destiny 2 I played a little bit of. To be fair, it was free. Wasn't too bad.
Yeah. I think I'm just
Sounds like
tired
when I
of
played Star Trek Online, I played it to the point that I'm like, huh, when you have to spend like 500 hours grinding for this, or pay real money, or
not play.
uninstall.
I think that's my biggest problem nowadays is these games as a service where it's like, Warcraft just set that trend in motion. Now it's like, oh, you can just keep play, get stuff and pay for stuff in game and all this stuff. I'm just like, man, I miss the days where I got my game, I put it in my Nintendo, it didn't work out, the blow on it, right? Stick it back in, push play, power, and I had a full game for $40.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel you there, man.
And I am not on Team 3D Mario or Zelda either. Screw that crap.
Yeah. My daughter's like all into Zelda. I'm like, no, here's the way it really looked. And I threw out my old 8-bit Zelda gold cartridge. I'm like, here you go. It's not working. Yeah, you got to blow on the connectors a bit and kind of, barely press it in to get it to work.
Yeah. Well,
wow, high energy today. Woo!
well, I guess everything that I have to say would just continue the conversation trailing down video games. So I suppose like I'm what I've been trying to do here is just like kind of get an idea of what types of board games and stuff I'm interested in that are connected to the topic. And to be honest with you, like the things that you've touched on, like I don't know, yeah. Let's talk about how 3D Mario and Zelda are actually, like advancements in the genre. How the newest Mario especially blends together fairly seamlessly, 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional. If you really think that, Andy, you should play Super Mario Odyssey because it has 2-dimensional segments that are very much, I would say, faithful to their original. Like 2D Mario. What do you think about that, Trent?
No
like
opinion.
Super Mario Odyssey and the 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional parts?
Okay. Mario Odyssey is the best 3D Mario, hands down, not even close. I like how they did the little 2D bits in it. I think that those were clever. It's the best Mario game since the Super Nintendo.
I'll play Mario 2 over
I've never played.
Oh, shots fired.
I've never played Super Mario 3D World, but I've heard that that's supposed to be like, the one that people are kind of jaws dropped. Why didn't we get this one on the, like, they're porting every game from the Wii U. It's like new Super Mario Brothers, which by the way, Andy, is just basically the same stuff. It's like it's not even 2.5. It's 3D visuals, but 2D gameplay. Everything about it is exactly what you want. And, yeah. So
my kids got that for Christmas.
Mm-hmm. I have not even opened mine yet because I've got a couple other games that I'm forcing myself to play them because I found it on sale. So yeah, it's apparently that new one for the Switch has all this stuff for it. So yeah, TC, this is all the things that were on my mind regarding video games. So here we are.
Nice. The last Mario game I really got into is Super Mario 64. I remember playing the crap out of that thing.
I think that, Super Mario Odyssey has I guess I just beat, I guess I just unlocked by getting 250 moons or whatever the next thing. And I feel like it's just, this game is really challenging how much I'm willing to do to unlock whatever's next. It's like, I feel like there's, there was a nice ending after about 12 hours, but then there's just so much more to the game. Just so much more. The point of just, you have to go to a certain spot and then wait for there's like hidden moons where all you're doing is just sitting there waiting for the controller to rumble, and you have to feel the rumble in the right spot and then go ground pound it. And if you don't have if you don't go pay 50 coins to Toad to tell you where to go, that's you could just do that the entire time. And that's, but some people really enjoy, combing these levels to that level, to that degree. So
the only Mario worth playing after Mario World's Mario Kart.
Andy, your trolling statements are going to be compartmentalized, and we are going to start this episode. So, 3, 2, one. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin. I'm joined tonight by Troll Andy Dennison. That's actually TC Reed. Andy just laughed for his intro. TC Reed's here. How's it going, TC? We can go.
That was my Andy impersonation. I was trying to be the Andy troll. I'm sorry if I didn't quite pull that off. I'll practice.
No, you crushed it, TC. You really did. You crushed it. I like it. And we also have Trent Ham, who's got a Mario character he's going to be impersonating as well.
There's a dog.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the original Bow Wow. You know, they reused a lot of the sounds from the original Mario games in the new Super Mario Odyssey. Just another reason that it's an excellent
So
edition.
did you figure out my Mario impression? I was going for Shy Guy.
No. I thought it was the big ball thing on the chain that chase you around.
that was me. That was me pulling a TC and yeah. So we've all been talking for some reason about the video games we've been playing, the Mario games. I've noticed in our chat here that we have someone here from my board game club at school. And I say board game club, but it's really a gamers club that involves video games and board games, who's been chiming in. Carter, welcome to the discussion and telling us about finding 999 moons on Super Mario Odyssey. And that sounds wonderful. I'm bringing this up because I'd like to, say today was a wonderful send-off. It was the last time I'm going to be able to foreseeably plan on being there during the Gamers Club. And what that used to mean in years past was that the Gamers Club would have to kind of take the last couple of months of the year, the school year, as a hiatus before kicking it back off in August when we're back in session with the next school year. This year's different. This year, thanks to my co-advisor, to a sense, a cardboard cohort, though that means something else for us here in the media sense. But I have a co-sponsor, if you will, that is going to be taking the torch and continuing to meet and giving people, young gamers the opportunity to play board games, video games, card games, and engage in some great board gamer culture and just overall geek culture. So I'm super pumped for that and happy that it was such a great school year where from here on out, I have to look to the future where I'm going to be coaching tennis. But it was a really excellent go at it with Gamers Club. So thanks, Carter, who's here with me now, for all of your contributions to making some memorable moments like today's game of the Resistance Avalon, where we have now a tradition of recounting a story. Whenever you go on a quest, you have to say what you were going to do and then flip cards, for successes and fails, or saying, well, we were going to try to find a Krabby Patty, and so we went to Bikini Bottoms and we tried to get there, and it was really obvious and easy to get there. Anyway, we have a fun time doing that type of stuff. So some traditions have started to form with Gamers Club. I just wanted to quickly say today was an awesome send-off, for at least for my ability to be the advisor. So thanks to everybody who made it such an awesome year. And that's it for that little aside. This is a podcast about board games. So The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, we will review games. We will talk about something in the hobby and then hype games. The something today is the places we have interest in visiting as a result of the games that we play. A lot of games that are out there have physical maps that actually involve a certain geographical region or can be named after a spot. And there was a geek list on Board Game Geek that passed through my vision that was called visiting games, or visitable board games. And I found that just a fascinating thing to kind of collect all of the different places you can go. So we'll be talking about that and sort of expanding the scope of what that geek list did by also, of course, adding in a lot of places that you can visit on the choo-choo.
Choo-choo!
Choo-choo time.
Choo-choo!
I'm sure that'll be a direction that we head. So, but first, before any reviews get discussed, we need to thank our sponsor and also, tell you, funnel you towards the sponsor of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. That is GameSurplus.com. Check them out at GameSurplus.com, where you can go purchase board games and have them delivered right to your door, or P.O. box, though, it must be a pretty large P.O. box. It's shipping in the board game industry, of course, includes like square feet, not just square inches. It's can be a very big undertaking, and sometimes the actual size of a game will determine the amount of content you put in the game, as has Andy has discussed with how much gets into the PAX games from Sierra Madre. So
cheap shipping cost.
Well, the good news is at Game Surplus, you can get all of your games shipped to you for free. The games are literally fleeing Game Surplus to be shipped to you for free as long as you spend above $125. You can actually get some percentage points off if you use Good Board Ugly picks under the podcast pick section. So check that out and buy their games. But don't buy them too fast, because the last time I went to try to make an order, I added a game to my cart. By the time I went to check out, it was actually missing, and that was like a critical game that I needed. It was like it was kind of the one that I was pulling the trigger for. You know how you have okay, well, I'll get this game, I'll get that game, I'll get that game, but I don't need them right away. But as soon as this game comes out, that one's mine. It's coming this way, and I had a critical game that got dumped because it went out of stock right when I was purchasing.
This is why Joe doesn't have an order of Captains of the Gulf.
It very well could be that one. That one was
that one went out, like he didn't even get past pre-orders on that one, man.
It's not actually that one. No, I'm not gonna lie. It's not Captains of the Gulf. Gosh, my speaking is excellent tonight. Captains of the Gulf was not the game. But yeah, I'm not gonna say it because I think I would get judged.
I'm
okay.
here.
Here it is. Here it comes. I said that because I wanted to hear everybody guess. That's just all it does is make you want to guess.
Was it that Karma Sutra one?
Oh yeah, the one where you blow up a balloon and then draw a card, and you have to pop the balloon with another human being between the two body parts shown on the card. Yes, that one.
We'll invite a couple people in our game group back for that one. It won't get awkward at all.
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's certainly like when I see people for the first time at a game group, the first thing I think is like, how could I pop a balloon, between us? What are all the different
your game night? That sounds awesome.
DC, I just give you a hug when I see you.
I would be point blank guinea pig for that game just to get people gaming. Everybody staying around awkward. Why couldn't you get this going? Anyone wants to play Kama Sutra with me?
I'll just give you a big hug, and it'll be a hug so long that we'll just start slow dancing it. We'll
there
slow
we go.
dance that
There
hug
we go.
back and forth. And speaking of which, I don't get a chance to physically game with you, TC, and that is kind of sad. We're going to be talking about these places that we can visit, and I was wondering, from a perspective of somebody that is, a couple time zones west here on the West Coast, if you're sort of the specifics of what interests you in terms of a game where you're like, ooh, that's a place I want to go. Of course, aside from leaving the atmosphere, if there's any sort of games that you specifically
I don't think Mechatol Rex would actually count for this discussion, would it?
What do you think, Trent? I mean, that's the place that you might have spent some time on while playing Twilight Imperium 3 or Rex.
I think that might not be a real place.
Okay.
Sure.
I failed the topic within 5 minutes of discussing it. That's pretty amazing. No, I got some. I got one in particular I'm really excited to talk about.
Fortunately, I think with board games, you because people who do this in science fiction, like, what science fiction universe would you want to live in? I'm like, according to all the books I've read, your chances of dying in any of them seem rather high.
Yeah. Yeah, the atmospheres seem to be an issue. But in Super Mario Odyssey, there all it takes is just like a very small fishbowl over your head to apparently maintain life on the moons of Mario, even on the dark side of the moon. Derailing the conversation again already. So we will be discussing where we're going to be getting off to and everything once we get done with our reviews. But anyway, TC, like mentioned before, I really would love to actually get to game with you in the same physical space, whether or not that involves physically popping balloons in Kama Sutra, or trying to read each other's emotions in the fog of love and decide whether or not we are actually doomed for a breakup. And we just need to respectively exit.
I do also. There's a used copy of "Then We Held Hands" at the game store Wednesday night. I almost picked it up.
I want to know the story that led that to be on the used game shelf.
Yeah, I know. That's someone probably. Yeah, either they didn't know what they were getting into, or they tried it with someone and it didn't work out, or it wasn't a good solitaire game. I don't know. It's probably one of those.
I can vouch that it's not a good solitaire game.
You have a hard time reading your own mind?
Yeah.
Is it a good solitaire game if you have multiple personality disorder?
Yeah. Only if you lose it.
Well, the stories that you could tell in board game by reading the used shelf of your local game store. And then we held it. It's a pretty good one. I like that.
I'm pretty sure either one of those games, if it was played with me, people would just end up like, what are you even thinking about right now? Because it's never normal.
That's a game where you're like supposed to kind of maintain like a radio silence as you play. You're supposed to just read each other's, moods. It's
I
like
have a slightly autistic brain. That does not work well for me.
Well, yeah, when you're like terrified of ever making eye contact.
Well, it was more along the lines of like, it was fortunate that my best friend set up me and my wife, because she told my wife like, he's going to like miss every social cue imaginable, but like he probably will be having a good time. You just have to figure it out this way.
You have to administer him a survey. Like you gotta send him a survey, and then he'll be like, "Ooh, I get this. Yes, I can answer questions on a scale of 1 to 5." So, well, Andy, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with a solitaire game?
It's not a solitaire game.
It's well. Wait a minute.
What?
Am I wrong here? Isn't this one from? I thought this was a solitaire game from Hollandspiel.
It's a two-player game.
Two-player. It can be played solitaire pretty easily, though.
Oh, okay. Yes. I guess I misread. I thought from before. So is this the expansion or is this the original one? This is
the original.
Okay, so this is the original Supply Lines of the American Revolution, a game that can be played solitaire. I was mistaken from the last time we discussed it and believed that it actually was a solitaire game. Should have had my facts straight. But I was just trying to say, that anyway, a two-player game, since Andy's looking, we're talking about Andy's bonding abilities. How is your two-player gaming experience going here, Andy? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm giving a little bit of initial thoughts on it. So this is Supply Lines of the American Revolution, the Northern Theater, 1775 to 1777. So this is put out by Hollandspiel. It's actually it's a two-player game, although it's kind of a perfect information game. So you can, it's one of those that lends itself pretty easily to playing both sides, trying to play optimally kind of thing. The way it works is you've got a map of generally the colonies involved with the American Revolution. It's not like a completely true to accurate map, because this game is a little bit closer to an abstract on that level. But it is also a war game. So you have chits, you have leaders. The thing that makes this game interesting is it's even though it's a war game, it does have some dice combat in it. The game is won and lost based on your logistics. So your supplies are generated in various cities that you have to have units in. And then to actually do combat, move, or everything takes a certain amount of food or arms or whatever. And you have to be able to ship those via a supply line. So you have to be able to move them along a supply line of chits to reach whatever it is you're trying to do. And so the way the game kind of works is, if you want to move a unit up to 4 armies, you have to use a food cube. That needs to either be carried by that army or it has to follow an unbroken line of your units to wherever it is, and then you can ship it on that. one side is going to be playing the Patriots, one side is going to be playing the British. There's a little bit of asymmetry in how you win. So the Patriots win by basically, getting through to the Declaration of Independence and basically getting France involved. And they're going to do that through, trying to win victories and things like that. The British player wins by basically capturing and controlling a set number of cities. And you're both working towards this goal. Now, the thing that makes this kind of interesting too is you have to take risks to win this game. But if you take a lot of risks or the wrong risk, you're going to get punished pretty bad for it. So you don't have enough units to really do it the best way possible. So, you have to be like, okay, what do I really need to do? Is this worth my risk? And even then, like, you can mitigate some of the randomness of the combat and the dice rolling through that. But you're going to have to take a chance at some point to really win it. You will get more units as it goes on, but that's kind of different depending on what you're playing. So if you're playing the Patriots, you draw chits out of a cup, and that tells you what cities are going to produce more units. However, if the British player occupies that city, then it's just a dead chit. You don't get any more units. The British, it's kind of cool because they have to take off these reinforcement chits to get more units. Like, they will never get more units unless they call up basically England for it. And every chit they remove to get themselves more units makes it harder for them to achieve victory. They have to capture more and more cities to actually win the game. So much so that if they draw their last chit, if they take their last chit to call for reinforcements, they have to win the game in one turn. They get one more turn to win the game. If they don't, they lose. And then the Patriot player automatically wins. So it's kind of like how to achieve your objectives. It's definitely not a like you try to wipe out your enemy completely kind of thing. It's very much you got to keep your goals in mind. You got to go for it and get them there. But you're really going to win or lose this game based on those logistics more than the combat. The combat is your typical sort of war game thing. The Patriots hit on 1-2. The British hit on 1-2 or 3. It changes a little bit if you're attacking a city. But the game is very interesting. It's very thinky. There's a lot of times you're sitting there going, oh God, do I move? Do I do this? You can actually choose to pass as well, but there's this little pass marker, and every time somebody passes, it gets closer to 0. And if it hits 0, like, the turn's over. So you can try to pass and basically stall out and get to the next turn. Or you have to be careful because if both players pass sequentially, the turn is just automatically over. So you might do something like, I'm going to say pass because I really want to see what my opponent does. And if the opponent goes, nope, I'm good, pass, like anything you were planning for that turn's now done.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is interesting. Like I said, it's very much more of like a logistics game with kind of a war element to it with that fighting. But I know some people complained about the randomness in the fighting. And basically, I think Tom Russell's response to that was, why are you fighting when you're not sure of victory? Most militaries don't do that. They don't go, hey, let's go for a fair fight. It's like, no, statistically I should win this. Okay, let's do it. That being said, like, the dice could work against you and you could still lose, but you can definitely increase or decrease your chances of that through skilled maneuvering, gameplay, and use of those supplies. So that is supply lines, the Northern Theater. There's also supply lines, the Southern Theater. Hopefully I'll get to that. It's a little bit different. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's a real interesting 2-player game.
Trent, have you played this one as well?
Yeah,
yes, I played it with Andy.
I figured that was why it was such an immediate, like, what are you talking about? It's not a 2-player game. So what are your thoughts?
Very much mirror Andy's. I felt like our game was very exploratory. I was trying to figure out how the system worked very much. It's very clear that, like, given the title of the game, that supply lines are really important. You need to have chains of your guys out on the board or else things are going to go badly for you. Let's put it that way. You got to have all of your. You've got to directly have all of your areas connected, or else there's problems. If someone breaks your supply line, you're probably in deep trouble. That's a unique aspect of this game that I liked. It feels. It's one of those games where the rules up front feel more complicated than the game actually is when you're playing it.
Yeah,
Definitely is one of those. The rules teach feels like it's long and there's a lot going on, but when you're actually playing it, it's not really that complicated. I didn't have any sense of what to do, so I wound up in a situation where like lots of dice were rolled and the game kind of swung on the outcome of the big fistful of dice. I don't think it's normally supposed to go that way. It's just the way our game went. I'm looking forward to exploring it more.
Yeah, our plan, I think, is to play this again next week. So my plan is to kind of come back with after a second play, see kind of how things have changed or not.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot more to explain here, and I guess we'll wait for a further update on that one. Before we, let's see here, before we dive into looking at what TC, so between you and I, TC, we're definitely both prepared for the topic we're going to be going into. So it really doesn't matter. But definitely next up, that leaves Trent to talk about a place that exists certainly in the mind of many, but not in the real world, unless you want to talk about a pseudo form of the Northeast England that would exist only in your nightmares.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, which is the newer one released by Fantasy Flight within the last few months.
Been interested to hear about this one.
All right, so if you're unfamiliar with the Arkham Horror games, basically they're very storytelling oriented. All of the Fantasy Flight Lovecraft games that they have, and they have a number of them, they're all very storyline oriented. They're intended to tell stories that are in the tradition of H.P. Lovecraft stories, where some sort of tentacled, horrible elder god is trying to break into our universe, drive people crazy, destroy the world, etc., etc. They all take place in a largely realistic 1920s Massachusetts, other than all the horrible things running awry. They take that away, and it's basically 1920s Massachusetts. And in this particular game, you are exploring the town of Arkham, Massachusetts, on a rather tight map. So it's plays from 1 to 6 players. Takes maybe 3 hours to play a game of it, I would guesstimate. I'm ballparking that because every time I played it hasn't been a teaching experience thus far, and they've all been a little over 3 hours, I think. Anyway, so everybody has a character. Each character has a bunch of attributes. It feels like a light role-playing game. In fact, I would describe it as being a role-playing game without a DM. It's kind of what it feels like. You're moving around on the map. If various events happen, so on and so forth. You roll out a dice. Most games, that, in my experience, I'd say about the majority of the games of this end up with everybody a complete party wipe, because this seems to be fairly difficult as these go. I mean, I'm trying to review this without going into endless rules detail, because I definitely could on these, because Arkham Horror, 2nd Edition, 3rd Edition, and Eldritch Horror are all fairly rules heavy if you want to get into it. There's a lot of things you can potentially do, and a lot of things go on. There's a lot of different mechanisms going on at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about in general how this game feels. The map feels very tight. It really feels like Arkham's not that big of a town. I think that's what they were going for. The board on Eldritch Horror feels much, much, much larger. This one feels like you're kind of in, like, you're going down the narrow streets and bad things are just around the corner. Very much gives that sense. A lot of the other games, it feels like you're spending your turns powering up for the events that are going to happen to you. This one, it feels like the events are generally powering you up, and you're spending your actions dealing with all the crazy stuff that's all over the place. So it kind of flips what you expect from Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror if you played them kind of on their ear. And that the event cards that come up are largely positive in this. When you draw an event card at the end of your round, it's usually giving you something good. But you have to be spending your turns dealing with crap on the board, or else you're going to lose in this. There's a lot more bad stuff coming out at a very fast pace, it feels like. It feels like the bad things coming out in those other two games are kind of at a slower pace, whereas this one's just throwing bad crap on the board nonstop. It's very okay, so the game comes with 4 stories, and the way these stories work is they essentially, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It would probably make the most sense if you played Arkham Horror, the card game. The system is very much like that, in which there's a sequence of cards you go through that give you some sort of objective that's specific for what's going on, and then you try to complete that objective and then go to the next one. This is told on a series of cards, but there's like 10 of them or so, depending on the scenario. And the interesting part is some of these cards, and I'm kind of jamming some rules together and some mechanisms, but some of these cards actually shuffle into the event decks that you draw. So as you're playing through, it feels like in the earlier games, Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror, when you draw an event card, it would just be like some random event that had nothing to do with what was going on. A lot of times in this, if you're drawing an event card, it's very specific to the actual story you're doing. So it feels like there's an actual real narrative here, other than collection of random events in Arkham or a collection of random events around the world as it was in the other games. This feels like there's a directive narrative when you're playing. Like, events are happening in sequence and they make sense and it's telling an actual story. And that's way better than the earlier games. This is one of the things that I found I didn't like about Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, is that all the events felt very random and unconnected. That is not the case here. They fixed that with a really clever system. In the end, though, this is still... another thing I want to mention that I did like about it. I think this is way easier to teach. Rather than some of the messy systems they had, especially in Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, but to an extent in Eldritch Horror, almost all the checks in this are really straightforward. Everything is really straightforward. You basically know, it's really obvious what your check is. You roll your die. You don't have to go 2-3 rolls. You don't have to know anything very special. My 8-year-old understands how to play this game, basically. He occasionally had a rules question or two, but he has had no problem playing through the first scenario with me. Not a bit. The rules, in terms of explaining them, are the most straightforward of any of these games. It's not hard to teach, which is something I liked. Still, in the end, it's more of a storytelling RPG game than a tactical board game. You do have to think about what you're doing and like what areas of the board you're going to tackle and who's best suited for this. So in that sense, it's like a co-op in like any like Pandemic or any other co-op. But at its heart, Arkham Horror is still a storytelling game. That's what it is. I think this is probably the best the system's come up with. There's basically, at this point, there's basically 2 of Fantasy Flight's games, like Lovecraft games, that I would be willing to play. Arkham Horror, the card game, and Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. All the other ones can go away as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I had a chance to play this one a few months ago, and I was surprised how much of the mechanics they took out of the Arkham the card game and implemented in the board game. With they had like the chaos bag, I think, was in there. The monsters were cards that exhausted when you could disengage with them. I like that that was a more cohesive story. We played like 2 of the 4. It was still very brutal. And I honestly, if it wasn't for the card game, I'd be playing this one. It's just we played it. It's like, yeah, this is neat. I like how they implemented stuff in the card game. Let's go back to playing the card game, guys.
Well, I think part of the reason I will say this in defense of the card game. The card game's now like 30 or 40 scenarios in, and they're doing really clever and interesting stuff with those scenarios. And you kind of want to see what they're doing with those. I mean, it's like, this is really a neat idea, some of the stuff they're doing. This has 4 scenarios in the main box. I don't know how they're planning on expanding this. I have no idea. They haven't announced anything. But I'm really curious as to what they do with the system, because it feels like there's a lot of stuff they can do.
Yeah, and the designer on that, I think Nikki Valens was the primary designer on that one. She did that Legacy of Dragonholt adventure book system that we enjoyed. And I think she was pretty heavily involved in Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition.
Which is a huge improvement over first.
Yeah.
By the way.
So I was surprised to see her on this. And in fact, when our store got a copy of the 3rd edition, they had like a hardback book where Richard Lanius was talking about the changes they made and stuff. So yeah, if you like Arkham and you want a better version of the Arkham Horror board game, I almost, like I said, if it wasn't for the card game, I'd be playing this one. It's just, we're still trying to get through the Forgotten Age. That scenario is so brutal in the card game. That's taking up all my Arkham time right now.
I think the thing that I really like about this is, one, it plays a little shorter than the other ones, and it's also easier to teach. But I think the thing that really gets me is there's actually a coherent story to be told.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Arkham Horror Second Edition and Old Horror, there really wasn't. It was just a sequence of random events.
And a bunch of random die rolls. Oh my goodness, man.
I mean, there are a few random things that happen in this, but I mean, but it's more like distribution of the bad effects on the board. The cards that you draw that tell the story are actually telling you a coherent story for the most part.
Yeah.
That's a vast improvement, and that's why I like this one better. So that's Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. I think if you're interested in getting a Lovecraft storytelling game from Fantasy Flight, this is the one I'd get.
That makes perfect sense, and you said the right things to make me want to give this one another shot. So, or give this system another shot, since I did play Eldritch Horror, didn't have all that much interest in it. But what you said here is, it sounds like it tells a more cohesive story, and that's what I felt like was missing from Eldritch Horror.
Yeah, you got to buy into the story with this, and if you do, then it's pretty good because it actually the scenarios do actually tell you a story.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, TC, I will let you kind of do a duty.
No, I do my duty.
I'll let you do your duty. But I'll let you do the duty of actually rounding out our reviews. I'll just slip one in here. And that is my takes after just one play of Brass Birmingham. For those that are unfamiliar with my previous experiences, I've played Brass Lancashire with the original game multiple times. It's a game that I quite enjoy, and I've certainly had some issues with it. I only really wanted to play with 4. And the game had this sort of external market that was okay, but the way that it sort of randomly would, sometimes you could sell, sometimes you couldn't. And then after that, it was just over and you had to build these ports. Well, basically, Brass Birmingham takes the same systems, but the way that it allows you to sell is much more distributed geographically in a way that starts the game randomly. And then there is no randomness beyond the card draw once the game starts. You are going to be developing the manufacturing, pottery, and cotton mainly to score points, as well as the coal and iron works of industrial revolution era England. And you do this by playing cards to build industries, and you're also needing to develop those industries. You're also needing to sell, actually take actions to sort of exploit those industries you place on the board, and create a shipping, or not a shipping network, but like a logistical network where you can get stuff around the board. The changes for Brass Birmingham are all, in my opinion, improvements from Brass Lancashire, to the point where, seeing, like, as I'll keep playing it before I actually do pull the trigger on getting rid of Brass Lancashire. But at this point, I can't imagine why I would want to still own Brass Lancashire after Brass Birmingham has taken what seems to me to be kind of the same ideas, and sort of improved them and made them a little bit more interesting. And you get to consume beer, and it works better than building your own port and shipping to your own port. I mean, it's a more interesting thing. Thematically, you're supposed to be consuming beer because it was safer than water due to contaminants at the time. But basically, you are going to be actually producing a resource that is used to ship to external merchants, as opposed to just shipping to your own previously built ports, which I think is a much more interesting system. However, I do think that there are changes to the system that lead to certain areas on the board being significantly, potentially undervalued, where they suck. It can really suck if the board sets up in a certain way, because there are certain places that will not be able to be shipped to. And so you can have a game where most of the shipping can happen in a certain direction. And so you're going to be buying much more for that part of the map if you are wanting versatility in the way that you develop your system. That can certainly result, especially since you've got like this random card draw, in a little bit of what could develop to be a somewhat imbalanced. You could struggle with some lack of balance, but I really think that this is not an issue, because there is so much to the game that is factored into you being able to make choices with how you, once you got a network established, you can play industry cards, which allow you to build anywhere. So yes, certain location cards won't be as useful, but I don't think it's really that big of an issue. Overall, so many places that are on this map interest me, and that's one of the reasons, TC, that I was saying I was going to use it as a transition, because like you get to go from, you get the card for Birmingham, and that's exciting because that's the name of the game, and it goes all the way down to Worcester, or however you say it. We just say Worcester for the sauce.
Worcestershire
sauce.
Worcestershire.
And I mean, I actually have there are friends in our local game group that come from that area, and apparently the places where that stuff is made, you can even smell the sauce when being in that sort of area. So the same way that you can smell cereal when you're in Cedar Rapids, which my brother who lives there calls the city of five smells. Do you smell the crunch berries? Apparently, you can smell Worcester sauce when you're in Worcester.
Man, if you come in on Highway 30, the whole everything smells like Cheerios. Oh my word! It's like a huge aroma of Cheerios.
If you drive the right spots at Interstate 80, everything smells like poop.
Yes. This is also one of the smells in Cedar Rapids as well. A large percentage of the town is built kind of in a drafting area from the sewage treatment plant. So the city of five smells. 3 of them are good. 2 of them are bad. 1 of them is the worst. So anyway.
Which one's the worst?
I would say the sewage treatment plant, but the corn syrup refinery has a very pungent, like it's more of a chemical smell, but it's not that great. It smells weird.
Have we derailed this episode enough yet?
Not yet.
Let's get back.
Anyway, my thoughts on Zelda as a franchise.
Goodness, yeah. Brass Birmingham is an improvement of the previous system of Brass. I think that it is everything that I wanted from Brass, and it plays in a more interesting, it's going to be easier to get new players into, but I don't think that's representative of it being in any way in a simpler game. I just think that the game has improved, has benefited from like a very long amount of time during which people can have been able to sort of develop their own player mats. And now we have very functional player mats that actually convey many of the rules of the game, so that the rules overhead is very low. You just kind of can see, oh, okay, well, that building doesn't require me to ship it with beer. I can just take a selling action and just be able to ship it. That's interesting. So, a lot of these different, like the way that the game has integrated more choice and variation throughout what you can do is all communicated very simply and without much rules overhead. I just think it's overall an excellent product. I like the way that you have one side of the board is easier to see, and the other side is like your nighttime board, which apparently one of the lines is that these are places that were like black during the day and orange at night or something. I forget exactly what it was, but it was a cool line that had to do with like the fact that there was always coal in the air during the day, and then during the night you could just see the forges and stuff. So I, of course, botching that quote entirely, but that's why you should check it out, because it's somewhere in the supplementary materials for this game. I love Brass Birmingham in my one play, and I want to continue to play it more. And now I want to go to Worcester and smell the Worcester sauce being made. So that's my take on Brass Birmingham. Andy, do you have some thoughts to add? Because you were in that game as well.
I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. I need more plays to know if one like completely replaces the other. The things I think that I came out of the game with are it's definitely trying to change the way I think some of the initial strategies in Brass were. So like Brass often felt like with the external markets, if you're not like first or second in player order at the beginning of the game with the right cards in your hand, you might as well just give up on that process, because the market's going to die before you get anything going. The other thing it seemed to have changed, I think, was in the original Brass, when you build your different buildings, each level you build is just better. Like 2 is always better than 1. 3 is always better than 2. Which led to one of the main strategies being using the development action to pull off the crap buildings at the beginning and just build the good ones for the rest of the game. Brass Birmingham changed that to where if you look through the chains of the different buildings you can play, like the coal and the iron pretty much work the same. But if you look at the pottery and the finished goods and the beer and that kind of stuff, sometimes like the first or second one will have this really awesome payoff, and then the next level of that building you have to build will cost more and give you less. Like, you know, you'll only get one victory point. And basically what I think they're trying to make you do is use the development action to cycle through the bad ones to get to the good ones, rather than just cycle all of the beginning era things out like some people used to do in Brass Lancashire. Those are kind of the two thoughts I came away with it thinking. As far as, I don't know which one's better, or if there's, you know, is it worth keeping both or not? I'd still have to play Birmingham a few more times, I think, before I'd be ready to say either one of those. But yeah, there's enough there, I think, to make you know you're playing a Brass game. But I think the strategies you need in Birmingham are going to be a bit moderately different. I wouldn't say completely different, moderately different for sure.
Sure, certainly. TC, Trent, any thoughts so far?
I've played this once or twice. I rather enjoyed it. I liked it. As far as for one replacing the other, I really think both of these can sit on your shelf.
Oh yeah.
I mean, easily. There were a few things I did like about this one than the original, in that there were a few things were a little bit more streamlined. Like, you don't have you can still take loans out. There wasn't an end to taking loans where you have to bury some cards underneath this cardboard thing so you don't do things. And but yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. I just got a kick out of the beer, where beer was like a better than water. that was really thematic, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I've only played it twice, but yeah, I could actually see owning both of these, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've had it set up on the table. I've had it set up on the table in front of me 3 times and have yet to play it.
I'm sorry, Trent. That's sad. That's bad. Brass is one of those games that I was like, it's one of my favorite games that I never win. I love playing it, but I don't think I've won a single game of Brass.
Yeah. We'll put it this way. As much as I'm kind of on a lot of Euros, like Brass is a Euro that I will very rarely not play. Like if it's on the table and someone's like, "Do you want to play Brass?" Be like, "Yes, I do."
Yeah,
it's so close. I'm sorry. It's so close to being an economic game, though, Andy. I mean, seriously, like how many times in this game was I that $1 short of doing stuff? It was just like a cruel joke to me. I was always exactly $1 short.
Oh, it was so hilarious.
I mean, it's my favorite economic game, and I think a lot of it has to do with the logistics of the board, having to put them out, figure out how to connect things, how to use other people's tiles to your advantage. I just love the logistics of this of Brass. I love it, and I suck at it, but I love it.
Yep. Well, TC, let's hear about a game that, from what I understand, it has been your new love affair.
Well, more or less, yeah. So, a few months ago, I got on I've been wanting like a nice Euro, right? I'm like, I want to play a good Euro game. And Village is a game that I love to play, but I don't actually own. So I was going to pull the trigger on Village. And then I think it was you, Joe, or someone saying like, oh, do you know that brand? Because I love Inca and Marcus brand. They're like my favorite Euro designers as husband and wife team. And I think you said like, well, they did Rajas of the Ganges. Have you seen that? I'm like, no, I've not heard of that. I feel ashamed that I have not looked into it. So I went to Game Surplus and rectified it because I showed Carissa the cover. And she's like, oh, it's got Kali on it with all these arms holding dice. You should definitely get it. And I went, yeah, it's the brand couple. We should definitely get this going. So I got it about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we broke it out. And I have to tell you, I am really enamored with this thing. Now, this game actually fixes a few problems I have with Euro games in general. One of the big things that bugs me about a Euro game is if I get lapped on a scoring track. That really drives me up the wall. Nothing will upset me quicker than watching someone just lap me on a victory point track. Because at that point, it's like, why am I bothered playing? I just got lapped. Yeah, it's like, this one has 2 competing tracks, and the game ends when the 2 meet. So you have a fame track and an income track. And once those two markers pass each other, that triggers the end of the game. Then that's really neat, I think, because it's a way to pull off combos and get things going and not actually lap someone. Because I think if this game actually had a scoring track that goes around the board, there'd be some lappage involved. But I love the fact that it's a race game. Other thing I like about it is that I was talking to you about it at length, Joe, and you were like, don't bother with the base game, just go straight into the what do you call it, the expansions that come with it. Of course, I didn't do that. I wanted to taught it with just the base game, and then we went to the advanced game, and when I taught this game, I played it like 3 or 4 times. When I taught it, I said, okay, I'm going to play the advanced variant. You guys use the base variant so you can figure the game out. Because another thing that drives me up the wall about some Euros is that the person who usually knows the game's going to win it, right? Because they know how it works and how everything integrates. That kind of evens the playing field a bit if you're teaching the game to someone new. So that actually works if you did that, where you teach the game, you use the base game, and the people who are experienced use the advanced variant. And it's actually very competitive that way. So that's another big bonus, where if you're learning a game, you don't feel like you're just automatically going to get crushed like playing a Splotter game or 18XX or something like that. You're actually, it's like you're learning it, and the people who are playing it still feel somewhat competitive. I love the dice in this game. It actually uses resources because you're actually earning money, but another source of, you have to spend your dice to get tiles to put on your board. Now, this game, in typical brand fashion, like Village was very typical of this, is they have like 3 or 4 different games smashed together in a game. Because Village had the port, you had the church, you had the market. This one, you've got, you have this income, you got your board where you're putting tiles out a la Carcassonne or something like that, but it's also generating your income. You're also building buildings, which gives you fame, and all this just integrates together in a really neat way. And for a dice game, there's really not that much randomness because, and another favorite mechanic of mine is if you roll badly, you can spend karma, your good karma, to flip your die to get a better die roll. I think that's amazing. I just love the concept of you spending your good karma to get a better die roll, right? It's just hilarious. I love that. I thought that was really clever use of words there. Thematically, it doesn't hold up very well, but mechanically it does. The artwork is gorgeous on this thing. I mean, and it's a little bit to the game's detriment because the artwork makes it look busier than it actually is. Because the first time you look at it, like, oh my goodness, look at all this stuff going on. It's like, no, this is a worker placement game at heart. So it's just showing you where you can put your guy out. And plus, there's like little things on the board where if you pass the track, it gives you different bonuses. So there's a lot to absorb in your future games. But man, once this game fires off and you're looking at it, there's really not that much direct player interaction. It's basically you're looking at the board trying to figure out how to be more efficient than your opponents and executing it. And it's only like a 45-minute game, maybe 65 if you're teaching it. So it moves at a pretty brisk pace. I've really enjoyed this one. Joe, you've called it a Stone Age killer. I can see that. I mean, it does a lot better job with the dice than Stone Age does, and you're not feeding your people wood to keep them alive. He did in Stone Age, right?
Yes.
It's just, and then there's different paths. Like the first time I played it, I kind of did the balance thing. The second time I was like, I'm going on the money track to see if I can't win it. Then another time I just see if I can't shoot up the fame track instead of the money track. The one thing I have noticed is that the market is pretty powerful if other people don't be competitive on it. Because
by the market, you mean the palace actions, the ones where you come there with specific values of dice, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or what do you mean?
It's the ones where you have the markets on your tile, so you like go there and you put a worker there, and you have 4 different spices, and you get like all that money again.
Yes.
And if other people aren't doing that, and you're letting another person get all the good markets, and you're not blocking, they can just fly up that money track by dominating the market. That's not unusual for a brand game because in Village, at least the base game, if you didn't compete on the market in Village, you were going to lose. No matter what else you did, you had to get in on the market in Village to stay competitive. And I think this game has that thing. I think you have to get in on the market in Rajas as well, and at least be competitive on it to stop people from dominating it. The few people who have played it in the past have said that's kind of thing they didn't enjoy about it, but I don't know. I'm really enjoying it. I've played it like 7 times now. I think it's just it's clicking. I like it. It's a worker placement game that does unique things with dice, and it's got a nice economy going to it where you're trying to get tiles out to build your board. Typically I don't like games where you have your own board other people can't mess with, but this one works for me for some reason. But yeah, it's a kind of a Frankenstein monster game that kind of hits all the sweet spots I like in a Euro game. So I've been enjoying it a lot. And if you haven't had a chance to play it, I highly recommend it. And I think you can play it online now on what's that place called? Yucata?
Yeah, Yucata has it, and I was actually just looking it up here, and I have now played 35 games of Rajas the Ganges, and that's not including ones I'm currently playing. So, I like you, TC. You'd mentioned that you tried playing without any expansions because the game itself comes with some expansion options. You have like sort of the 2 different, like you can just kind of change up the way that the river works. Yeah. I guess I'm not 100% sure why you would do that because. I guess, each game being different is one thing, but like that's just one action you can take. And the way that the river fits into the rest of the game, like there are certain areas that are kind of more powerful than others. And yeah, it's almost like the way the river is balanced, at least from a starting perspective, makes a lot of sense to me. And that, that initial setup can certainly, anything can happen with the way they have it set up. So it can make it so that the river is really a lot more worth it than it would normally be. But that's just like an example of how I think this game is really, really balanced. I would say that there's maybe an area or two, the place where you go and just get regular dice. You can get like for 1 worker and no dice, you can get a single die of pretty much whatever color you want. There's like an open spot for every color. And then the same thing, except specific dice are required to then get 2 dice of a different color. And I feel just kind of like that whole area is very, it almost never fills up. It's never that big of a deal. And every time I take that action, I feel like it sucks. Yeah. It's really not worth it. I feel like, the first person to go to that area should maybe get some sort of an added bonus, to give some sort of incentive because you're like, oh, yeah, I can take this added bonus. And now, especially if I see that my opponent is diceless, because you can become diceless in this game.
That's bad.
And if you are diceless, yes, you can work yourself down to no resources. It's kind of like going totally free of resources in Stone Age. You're just like totally screwed. And it's in a position that's, there's like 2 or 3 spots on the board you can actually go to. But I feel like, there are times when you can get yourself into a mess or you can kind of work your opponent into a bit of a tight spot. And those are interesting to me. I feel like that spot, though, that I just talked about could be a little more interesting. But TC, overall, I love this game. Like, there's a reason I keep on playing it. It's the type of Euro game that to me feels like you're just trying to keep yourself paddling because you can certainly sink below the water.
Yeah.
And you just keep on bouncing from one bonus to another bonus to another bonus to another bonus. And that balanced approach that you talked about, TC, is something I find myself really trying to do every game if it's a possibility. But like if there's a fortuitous draw for markets, and I can get a hold of like a couple of the 3-level markets and something, and I can get like 3 markets that I'm getting some really efficient actions, like that's the way I go. It really just depends on what comes up, whether or not I've got the right upgrades. Like it's one of those games that has the right focus on tactics for its weight to where it's just, to me, a very, very playable, constantly, like I love this game and I don't play with any of the expansion crap, period. I've tried the Mango Village on Yucata and I hated it. Absolutely hated it because it just was, it was too good. It was like this one area that was so overpowered that you just, what it basically did was force you to use it. And it forced you to use it. It pretty much added like another market area. You mentioned that the markets can be overpowered. And that to me is based on a draw that you can't really guarantee. You have to, there's certain things have to happen to even make that strategy possible.
You have to be able to get the tiles and then be able to get on the user worker place with somebody. It's very conditional. But if people aren't countering that, it's easy to capitalize on it. And it hits the weight spot. It's a nice medium weight Euro with really nice decisions. You can do really cool combos if you can see it on the board, because everything's open information except when you roll the dice and you got to figure out how to spin the dice. But everything else is pretty much open. So it's, you can do neat combos. Like you say with the dice, you can actually you can move up. Like if you're really good at generating money, the further up you get on that track, the more dice you're going to be able to get to roll. So you can combo and do things. And some days I just like that, where you can just pull off like this great combo. It just feels really, really, really good.
Yep. And we have a perspective in our chat here from Mur telling us that the version that he prefers to play is the expanded Navaratness one, and that's where your board starts without a lot of the bonuses, and then you have to take actions to actually get them there. And I certainly see how that could be a more interesting way to play the game, especially with experienced players. For me, I like to hit the ground running when I play this game, and maybe it's just because I haven't really played it when I played it in person, I would play so many games of it with newer players or with players that didn't want to play with expansions. So I just kind of played that most simple game. And now what I'm finding is, that's what I've sort of tailored my gameplay towards. And I'm almost scared. This is one of those, I think this is maybe one of those scary things about playing games in a competitive sense, where I'm actually paying attention to my rating for this game, because I have to have 11 games where my skill level is above this amount. It's like as soon as I start trying to figure things out, that threatens it. And as cool as that is, and as interesting as that is, and as much as you're judging me for what I'm saying right now, I am scared to try this, because I've hit this level where I'm pretty sure that if I started a game like this, anybody who's going to jump into a game with somebody that is at least paying attention to your true skill online is going to just wipe the floor with me. Absolutely trounce me in the game. So I don't know. I do want to play it, but I'd like to play it in person with the extra expansions before I do play it online.
The one thing I like about the expansion that Mira was talking about is that you start the game with a brown token, and it's like an in-game condition that you can tailor your strategy to get. The one I got was fame for every 3 spaces I was on the river track. So I just went up the river as far as I could go, and when I got that, I got an extra 8 fame, which threw me to the end of the game, which got me the game and won it, which is pretty cool. So that's it. It's nice to have that, where you can have something you can focus on. Okay, this is the end game. If I want to focus for this, I can pull this off. I'm going to get it. And if you don't get that, you can draw another brown one and put it on the other side and go for that one instead. So it's a good game. I don't know if it would be. I don't know if it's village level good, but it's good. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly really like this one. And you know what? It's a really cool place. At least the artwork in this game really makes me interested in visiting the Ganges. But if you have paid any attention to the news recently, the Ganges is one of the most polluted rivers in the world.
Yeah, I saw an article had the top 50 polluted cities in the world, and half of them was in India.
Yeah, so it's a lot of that has to do with just I think where you are in terms of the developing, and whether or not once I think the Cuyahoga River was famous for catching fire, right? In the mid-century for the the Ohio in Ohio, and now the Cuyahoga is apparently back to being a really beautiful watershed, but now it certainly went through at least something that Randy Newman thought was worth writing songs about. The Lord can make you tumble. The Lord can make you turn. The Lord can make you something. The Lord can't make you burn. That's good old Randy Newman there. Some awesome songwriting. But so that's one of the places that I would love to get a chance to go and visit. Is there anything, when I just say that, of the gaming experiences you have, is there any places that have a sort of almost fantasy wonderland luster in your mind, where you just want to go visit them as a result of having played a game?
Are you talking about real world places?
I mean, yeah, that's where I guess I'm thinking about it in terms of real world places. While you guys think, I can say.
I could tell you right now. I don't know if this may be a little bit too somber, but me and Carissa, we played quite a bit of the Grizzled and Paths of Glory. And after playing those games, I really, really want to go to No Man's Land and see what trench warfare, see what's left of the trenches from World War I, just to see it, because I've seen pictures of what these places look like, and it's still tremendously devastated after all this time. But just after playing those games and hearing the hardships and seeing what went on, I want to actually go see these in real life. I know that's not quite where you're going with it, but in terms of playing a board game, I just want to see this. I mean, especially after playing the Grizzled and how brutal that game is, and how it tore up families who all went together to fight on the line. And then seeing pictures of what these places look like now. I mean, they're green and lush, but they are still tremendously scarred, and you can't even go through some of them because of all the unexploded ordnance out there and barbed wire. But I would like to see it. Maybe I'm morbid, but I think that has a tremendous amount of interest for me, is to see that.
The Maginot Line,
the Somme. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Really, just before I die, I'd like to see that.
So TC wants to crawl into a trench.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you crap. There's certainly a lot of those meat grinders that the Grizzle does a great job of portraying, and being able to connect with that, with the experience that you've had gaming, the sort of, the fact that you've had to take so many for the team, because the Grizzle certainly gets you to that point really quickly to where you understand what it's like to make sacrifices. I could see that being a very interesting experience.
But that's I could go through most of my GMT collection and go, oh, I'd like to visit some of these places, just because historically it sounded like very interesting places to go see.
Food chain magnet makes me want to see McDonald's.
I guess the best counter to this, before we even get the discussion started here, is to take any of those theme versions of Monopoly and say, oh yeah, I have Kansasopoly and I want to go visit Kansas. Ugh. Yeah. No, Kansas is a great place. Just the Monopoly. What was that, Andy?
I said, if we think Great Western Trail, I really enjoyed a vacation out west I took when I was young. I'd love to do that again.
The Great Western Trail is certainly one that is full, just chock full of different cities, especially if you add the railways to the north. That adds even more cities that you can go visit, that are kind of all give you several options for your Oregon Trail train visit. Speaking of Oregon Trail, that's where you're at, TC.
Yeah,
in Oregon.
Of course, I wouldn't necessarily call that a good game. You might die of dysentery before you actually made it up here. Another game that I play quite a bit that I wouldn't mind. I mean, this is just, it has to be this city. Just see a medieval town would be a Troyes. It's like the artwork seeing like a city that actually has some medieval history behind it, to see all the artwork of that style and what was going on. That'd be kind of neat. It could be France, could be Britain, just seeing an old modern city that had medieval ties to it, just to see the history. Because the artwork in Troyes, I think, is fantastic, even though maybe a lot of people disagree with it. But to see that history and that kind of thing, well, maybe a trip to Troyes would be nice.
Yeah, that could be great. We recently, TC and I being the we, discussed the game, the Great Zimbabwe, on the Longview podcast, and that is a historical, kind of a place that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And playing the Great Zimbabwe, you're building monuments that are very abstracted, but the monuments that would have been present in the culture of the 11th to 15th century, when the Great Zimbabwe was sort of flourishing in South Central Sub-Saharan Africa, it would, between the 11th and 15th century, be a very great thing, cool thing to see. So, and I know that Zimbabwe is probably not the best place for visitors while they're undergoing a conversion, sort of a transition between Robert Mugabe and other things. But anyway, this is kind of like speaking almost in the fairy tale land of our heads, where we'd love to go be able to take in a lot of the, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in that game. And I would love to learn about that. Just like if you listen to the the podcast that is kind of a sister to the Longview that Jeff Gamble just released, Bora Bora, and the culture that sort of happened in that area of Micronesia. It's to me a place that I certainly would love to, just to be able to see a lot of those things in person. I think that, being able to observe some of the cultural aspects would be very, very cool.
If I'm actually being serious and not saying stuff like Food Chain Magnet and Star Trek, I would actually say Lisboa.
Yeah.
Oh,
that would probably be my pick.
Definitely. I hear you with Lisboa.
Yeah, that city has a fantastic history behind it. That would be really interesting to go to. Yeah,
that's probably my pick of ones I can think of. I mean, obviously, aside from things that are not possible or McDonald's.
Yeah. St. Petersburg is one that I'd be interested in. I mean, for some reason, like the games that don't tell you much about the history are almost the ones that they feel the furthest from reality, and maybe that's where they reside in that more fantastical part of my brain. In St. Petersburg, there's not really much of a reason for each of the different places in the game to have, it's just like how many victory points or how much money do they give you. But the story behind it is that, the Tsar Peter decided to move the capital, and now everybody's kind of rushing to keep up with these building projects. And I would love to see how, the cities that were modern at their time certainly have a certain, the way that they all built up in a very uniform way, have a way of depicting almost the time period that they're coming from.
I like your pun in there, Joe. The people of St. Petersburg were Russian to build new projects.
Oh gosh, I apologize to everybody. That is totally missed. Totally missed.
Yeah.
Recently, the game Coimbra, and the way that the city looks from an outside perspective, like the actual Coimbra look on the box, if you look at the city of Coimbra from a picture from the water, it's a really cool depiction. When you see like a game cartoonified, and that's kind of what I was thinking with Rajas of the Ganges, is like there's certain like artwork styles that, at least in Rajas of the Ganges, I feel like the different temple buildings have a very I don't know, they just have that sort of rounded domes that I've never seen Dennis Lausen's artwork work at evoke that specific architectural style, and that makes it further something that I'd be interested in seeing. Plus, of course, who doesn't want to see elephants that are just playing around in the muck?
Yeah, I don't know. I took a class called medical entomology. That has killed any desire of anything along the tropics for me.
Chagas disease, malaria.
Yeah. It's like, oh, look, this parasite exists in this area of the tropics. Like before that, I was like, Africa. I'd love to go to Africa. And then I took that class. I'm like, never going to Africa. I'll go to Antarctica first. Everything there is dead.
So let's talk about trains. Of course, that's where every one of our episodes must go. We do happen to have Andy here, and Trent as well. Sorry, TC, you and I don't know the trains quite the same, but we still like the trains. Anyway, let's talk about Snowdonia first, because I think that's the most unique train, example of a game that's literally a train that you just go on a ride up a mountain. Like a leisure train rail, where you're going to the top of a mountain on a specific type of train that is made to climb a mountain. And that to me is, the experience, the fact that you're contributing to the building of that in the game, certainly is something that I find makes me want to go to that place in Wales.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of scenarios for various mountain railways.
Yeah.
There's like 3 or 4 that are literally specific about mountain railways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, but I kind of related to trains maybe anyway, but I played board games on them a lot, and kind of thinking about a trip we did on the train. Like legitimately, I think it would be cool to do something like a couple's getaway where you basically start at one point in the country and like ride the train. Like literally across the United States and the different lines. See what, like, the world looks, when you're on a train looking out like it, you get a lot better picture of what a place actually is like than if you're driving on interstates and whatnot. And that was just a really neat experience.
Sure. The way that like the trains can, like, you know, take you on journeys from one place to another. Is there any 18xx game, Andy, that you think is, you know, makes you more interested in a specific area than anything else? I guess the thing that comes to mind for me is, like, you know, are you more interested in visiting Sicily, like in 1849?
No,
Do you like
volcano.
No, I was wondering if that volcano would be a factor. Or would you be more like drawn to, you know, one that has a larger map with many more options, and you'd like to kind of go on a journey to a region?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if 18xx has ever made me feel particularly like enthused to travel in an area or not. Usually with 18xx, I'm beating my brain up with math, so maybe a math classroom. But no, I don't know if 18xx has ever made me particularly interested. I think, nah, I really can't pull one.
Okay, well, I appreciate you digging there. I think that Uwe Rosenberg has been prolific in his use of the places that he visits and how he lets them sort of inspire his designs. I think Aura et Labora was the first time I was familiar with this, because Ireland and France, he discussed at some length and in the materials included in the game that these were based on trips that he'd taken, and just looking at the way that the lifestyle was on the you know, the monastic areas and that sort of lifestyle, which kind of still exists to a certain extent. You'll even find that here in the U.S. We have, you know, like Trappist monks that still continue to live off the land, and to a certain extent, you know, that have their own lifestyle very separate from what I would call mainstream. It can be very interesting that way. So I think Uwe Rosenberg, having produced Glass Road, is another example of, and this was more industry focused, but on the Glass Road that's through, I think, is it called like the Black Forest there in southern Germany? The Nussfjord, which looks at a fishing village up in northern Norway, and most recently Reykjavik, the Icelandic veggie tourism. Literally, it's called the tourism track, and you need veggies to advance on it. Who would have ever thought of something like that?
I'm just happy I can go to Iceland and pay 4 tomatoes to ride a train.
Yeah, that's what it all is on the outside. Speicherstadt, even though it's just about like a giant warehouse district, the Speicherstadt by Stefan Feld has certainly made me interested in getting to at least witness this sort of gigantic water, you know, on top of the water warehouse district that's so uniform, you know, so uniform that it makes what's maybe the most drab, boring board I've ever seen in a game. A board that looks like it was designed, 1/4 of it was actually designed, and then they just hit copy and paste for the rest of the board.
Yeah. Oh no, there was another one I think of. After, you know, playing and looking at Vinhos and Madeira, like going to Portugal and downing a lot of awesome looking wine sounds appealing.
Oh yeah, Vinhos. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't think about that.
The Porto, especially. I mean, get some port wine. It's worth more points.
Was it? Yeah,
must be really good.
Norman Chat said K2. No.
Actually, K2 is somewhere on my list here. I was going to mention games. I talked a little bit about this with Caroline, my wife, who, you know, is drawn in a lot. Like, this was actually a topic that she was interested in, and she mentioned K2. She mentioned first actually Tokaido, which, you know, is a game that's just about going on a trip, and it involves, you know, like getting to go in a dip in the hot springs. Maybe the least interesting element to the game mechanically, but certainly the most cool thematically, at least the one that I'd love to be able to do right now that we're
just be careful of the monkeys. They steal stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to be trying to share spots.
No, legitimately, I read about this. Like, the monkeys have learned that they can steal humans' things, and they will actually ransom it back to you.
Oh my goodness, for like
So,
food and stuff.
Yeah, like if you give them food, they'll like give back your purse.
Get your stuff back from the monkeys in Japan. That is great.
Yeah, apparently my brother was stalked by one while he was there. Like it was like the weird horror movie thing. Like whenever he started walking, you'd hear the monkey walking, and then he'd turn around and look at it and just be like stopped staring at him.
I think that monkey's following you. Splatter, we mentioned the Great Zimbabwe. I had mentioned that one earlier, and I'd also like to mention
Food Chain Magnet. We mentioned Food Chain Magnet.
Food Chain Magnet, yes, going down
Indonesia.
To
How about Indonesia? We got
That's what I was going to say. Indonesia, they were called the Spice Islands, and that just, I mean, you can go down there and try the TV dinners that you can actually have produced and shipped. And I have actually family member. My sister-in-law is actually from Jakarta, so it would be a really cool. It would connect at least to a certain extent towards the industry of the island. That is what you're actually exploring in Indonesia. But connected to Indonesia, because it was formerly a Dutch possession, is Pandemic Rising Tide.
I'm so disappointed, man. I'm so disappointed in you, Joe.
Uh-oh.
You were saying a Splatter that you really wanted to visit, and I was assuming bus.
Just go to the school bus. Yeah. 18UR. I'd love to go to the...
Trent, you were close, but it should have been roads and boats, just so that you could ride the donkey. Ride the donkey.
I'm going to fly on a goose with ply boards.
Yeah. Airdrop your donkeys.
I was going to say Pandemic Rising Tide because that is making me nervous, actually, that, if I ever when I visit the Netherlands, I'm going to have to become a part of the effort to keep them from sinking to the sea. That's what the game's all about.
Yeah, well, it's sticking your finger in the wall.
Yeah, there is a card for that, the little Dutch boy. Orongo, let's see, Gugong is all about the Forbidden Palace and deals with a place that is very historically significant in China, and it also deals with the practice of bribery and how that changed. The Taj Mahal, Reiner Knizia's game Taj Mahal, especially the newest edition from Z-Man, whatever they were publishing it under, their Euro game, Euro Classics. It looks fantastic with its sort of patchwork board, and makes that region seem like a place to get to really go and enjoy. So remember, this entire thing is coming from somebody who lives in Iowa, which is like a wasteland for any of this type of stuff. So it'll be great when we do have a game that puts Des Moines more so. Des Moines, I think, does pop up in the Rust Belt map of Age of Steam, and don't you just love that it's like it's called the Rust Belt, and at the time that you're supposed to be making these railways, it wasn't the Rust Belt because you're laying the iron that will eventually rust.
Yeah, Iowa though, no. Unless they got a game about corn production somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Corn production and flat. That's kind of all we got.
Mm-hmm.
At least where we are.
You could play, if you're in northeastern Canada, you could try A Few Acres of Snow and relive the French-Indian War. Or you could actually play Expedition Northwest Passage, which was the search for that Northwest Passage in northern Canada. And go meet with our cardboard cohorts, Norm of the Bridge City Board Gamers. That's up in Saskatoon. Nice get there, Norm. So anyway, that's just a lot of different options. I don't think there's really much, there's not much commentary to be had about each of these places, but I think that's just, one element of, the fact that these places actually do exist. And, it's an homage. A lot of designers are creating these games as homages to a culture and a place that they've at some level fallen in love with. And I think that Jordan Draper, who's been publishing games, a whole series of games, the Tokyo Sushi Market, or what is it called? The Tokyo Fish Market, and then the Tokyo Metro. It's because, of travels and interactions with a place that, that has sparked the imagination, and it just goes hand in hand with creating something unique in terms of the mechanical design of the game. And that can certainly help to inspire my interest in getting to learn the place.
I had one more that I really wanted to mention. I'm going to mention Reef Encounter because I want to see the Great Barrier Reef before it's gone.
Yes.
Good point.
Yeah, no, I was reading a story about like there was a group of people out watching, like, you know, doing diving in the reef, and they got up, and one of the people involved was like an actual marine biologist, like visiting. And all of these people were like, "Oh, it was so beautiful, like it was all white and really eerie." And then the biologist like looked over at the driver. They're like, "Do they not know that that means it's dead?" And they're like, "Shh, don't wreck our tourism."
Jeez, great. Yeah.
Yeah, but Trent, you want the shrimp with the little googly eyes when you go to the Great Barrier Reef?
I'd probably prefer not, but
like the little meeples in the game.
yeah, the meeples are amusing. I like them.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah. There's so many games we haven't mentioned. A lot of Euro games center on a specific area, a specific city, and a lot of those actually seek to tell the history behind it, which has in many cases been very well preserved, which is nice to be able to draw from that. But I would say that a lot of those games also, like I learned how to play Ulm, ULM on Yucata, and you know the game itself just seems to have so little connection to, like, I feel like you could almost, you know, you're going down a river and you're getting in, you know, different areas in town that sort of just connect to other game systems. And maybe it's that I need to like the game first before the area captures my attention. But at least had a little bit more of, you know, a game that had Ulm in it, along with many other places in Germany. Turn and Taxis, you know, has those places like Budweiser and Pilsen, where you're like, hey, these are all the places the beer's named after. Budweiser, Pilsner, and it just is packed with a lot of, you know, historical places like the Bavaria that takes up most of the map, and Zurich pops up, Basel, Zurich. So anyway, I know this wasn't exactly the most deep of topics, but it's something that I just wanted to, you know, kind of a little bit of a breath mint of a topic here, because sometimes we do tackle the problems of the world. Nobody wants to go, you know, full on into some controversy without occasionally getting some nice fluffy. So this has been your light and fluffy topic, and I can tell that that my co-hosts here are like, wow, this feels weird. It's like
it's fluffy. I feel uncomfortable, Joe. I don't feel right.
Yeah. Aren't we supposed to be like fighting and arguing instead of just like sharing things and being like, yeah okay, yeah. Can't argue with that. Well, let's go into things that we can argue, and I think Trent's going to deliver that. That's been our topic. Hopefully, you know, these are places that you know, people get to visit and stuff. I know some people actually like to play the games named after the cities in those cities, take pictures of them. There's a lot of really cool things that you can do to pay homage to these wonderful games. Anyway, Trent, could you start our hype section with the Firebomb hype that I'm sure you're going to just love telling us about?
Yeah. So Age of Steam has a deluxe edition that's up on Kickstarter right now, which is really pretty and has Ian O'Toole art, and it doesn't have a designer name on the box.
What? I wonder why that is. I wonder. Gee, I don't. That seems really weird, Trent. That's odd.
Yeah, it's a strange decision. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna be nice and not even get into this. If you really want to know, you won't have to search very long around the Kickstarter to find people talking about it. But suffice it to say, there's some legal issues involved and some shady characters. But I will say this:
Sour grapes.
Wait! An Eagle Griffith game that has some controversy? That is so strange.
Yeah, there's some serious sour grapes and like a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah. I'm not even going to get into it. I have feelings about this, but I'm not even going to get started because I will be here for a while if I do. Suffice it to say, Age of Steam I believe, was my #1 game of all time when I did my all-time games list. So to see this deluxe edition with the Ian O'Toole art's very, very very, very exciting for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it comes out with. The box is supposed to be comically enormous, like larger than the Lisboa box.
Oh my god!
It's supposed to be able to hold. It's supposed to be able to hold 10 mounted maps, all the game components, and like poker chips for the money.
Oh my god! How is it gonna weigh? That's the shit.
It'll be heavy. It'll be heavy. So you'll be able to store a lot of maps in your box. Like, yeah. But I think it's going to be, it looks gorgeous. So I will give it that. And that's Age of Steam Deluxe Edition right now on Kickstarter. It's a good way to get my #1 game of all time.
Ooh. Very exciting. And the artwork does look fantastic for the game. I think that it's going to please people who are wanting it to stay clean, but also look like a nice, nice updated, kind of some more modern looking colors. So yeah, I'm very excited to see that game as well. Yeah, I don't want to get into the other stuff either. It's just, let's focus on the fluffy, right?
It funded. It funded. There you go. It funded.
I think it's like 300% funded, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
The comments are really fun to read.
Yay! Yeah. So if you go grab some popcorn and expect some really nice Tool artwork. It looks really great. So anyway, that's Age of Steam Deluxe Edition that is coming out with a potential of up to, I believe, 10 maps just in that box by itself.
Not 10 maps, 10 mounted map boards.
Really? Boards? Okay,
yeah.
So it wasn't just 10 maps. I thought it's going to come with 3 mounted map boards to start with. That's how much I'm seeing it starts with. But then there's going to be up to 10 mounted maps. That would be like,
that's
so
my understanding
20.
from having read through a bunch of the stuff is that they're planning for 10 mounted map boards.
Wow.
Yeah, whether they'll get there or not is really going to be based on stretch goals. I think 2 have been added so far, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. But
yeah,
they're planning for 10 boards worth of maps. So
mm-hmm.
Whether they get there, I don't know. But that's a lot of maps. So
that is a lot of maps.
There's going to be mini-sized poker chips in this one, so definitely they understand their audience. But one of the more expensive $12 more to get little train meeples, instead of the cubes that comes with the original game.
Yes.
Is it going to be disc? Was it discs? I thought it's showing me cubes here, but. Oh no! Okay, yeah. I guess it's a goods cube they use for reference, but yeah, it's coming with discs, and you can pay $12 more to get something. And so I'm sure that Andy's gonna be doing it. But what do you think?
Because I looked into it, and they're not the trains are like a disc and a half size, so they're not like the stupid, ridiculously large plastic trains. It actually makes the game state harder to figure out. That was in the 3rd edition.
Yeah, they're reasonably sized and they're wooden, so I'm pretty much in favor of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is pretty much going to become my version of Age of Steam. So, like the old version I have, along with any duplicated maps, are going to quickly go on the cheapo trading block once this is out.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. Well, thank you, Trent, for dancing around that one. Let's go ahead and move on to another thing that will be hitting Kickstarter pretty soon from Andy.
Yeah, so I'm going to hype. Cole's been on Twitter talking about upcoming Root expansion. I believe that's due to Kickstart here. Oh, yeah, actually, I think I saw next week is when that is. He had just mentioned something about it on Twitter earlier. They're going to be adding in a couple new factions. One of them, I think it's the Underground. Basically, it's called the Underworld expansion, so you're getting crows or moles now. And I believe one of them, and I don't remember which one he said, is going to work like a cross between the cats and the Airy. Like it's going to kind of work.
That's the crows.
Yeah, the crows. So that looks interesting. And then the other one does something where they put plot. Like basically they do something that puts cards in other people's hands that are potentially bad.
That's the moles.
Yeah. So be like, here, take this card, and then they'll be like, oh god. The other thing, I think they're doing in the Kickstarter too, if I remember right, is they'll offer replacement boards for the previous releases to update them to the new edition. And they're supposed to be doing that at cost. So hopefully the price tag on that will be pretty reasonable for those that want to do that. Which I think I would recommend because I think it makes the Lizard Cult, playable.
Nice.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I've been a big fan of Root since I played it, and I want all the Root.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This one's very interesting. What do you think, Trent?
Yeah, I mean, more factions, and Cole vaguely hinted on Twitter earlier that there's more beyond that.
Cool. ATC.
Yeah, more root. I'm good. I'm down for more root.
More vagabond action.
Every time I played that game with a different faction, I've just loved it more and more and more. Bring it. I want more. Just give me more. I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm. You're not just going to stick to, you can't pull out of this alliance, so...
well, after that one game, it'll probably be quite a while before someone's let me play the Vagabonds again.
Oh, which is your favorite way to go, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess to play
naughty.
The birds.
The birds are a very cool faction to get to play. So, all right. Well, TC, had I been any better at this, I guess I would have had you sort of round it out with telling us about about the game that you're going to hype because it kind of connects to your review.
Yeah, it was just I've been so obsessed with Raja the Ganges. I saw there were some mini expansions for it. I am going to definitely run these down. And I'm kind of on an Inca Marcus brand kick anyway. And I've recently discovered that they did a legacy game called what was it? The Rise of Queensdale, I think. And this one looks. I simply want this one. Well, for 3 reasons. It's a brand game. It's legacy, and it comes with a royal plunger. I mean, I'm sold. I'm sold right there. So maybe we'll hit that after Seafall.
I'd be very interested to see how this one goes for you because I thought it was a cool concept, but I just had no idea how it would work, and the fact that it was legacy and that it was like a pretty huge box. Unfortunately, those things outweighed the coolness of the royal plunger.
Yeah, and rumor has it it's supposed to be better than Charterstone. So
really, wow.
Yeah, but so I am intrigued. So my hype is anything Inca Marcus brand at this point. My village, I'll probably make this list at some point too.
Trent, did I hear a thought about the Charterstone?
Yeah, I had mixed feelings about Charterstone. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. As I've said before, in my opinion, the most innovative legacy game that's come out so far is Seafall. So.
We'll see. I'll see. Like I said, if nothing else, I'll get a royal plunger out of this.
Very cool. I'm just interested in the newest project from Shem Phillips, who I think is really heading down a road where I was very interested in. I loved Raiders of the North Sea. I tried his next game, which was more of a departure from the formula that he was playing with in Raiders of the North Sea of a kind of a more simple Euro game worker placement, and it was still a Euro game, but I thought that Explorers of the North Sea was lacking something, at least for me. I think that he got back to something that I'm interested in with Architects of the West Kingdom.
And he's pretending that Shipwrights doesn't even exist.
Shipwrights is got some fans, but it's certainly I do not count myself as one of them. The new game he's making right now that's hit Kickstarter is called Paladins of the West Kingdom, and I think that the changes, the explorations that he is making regarding something that he's really tapped into that I find is well designed mechanically, and he's really playing with how much interaction people are comfortable with making in a Euro game. I really think Architects of the West Kingdom was about, you actually are kidnapping other players' workers, but it's almost like it's assumed that it's going to happen at some point. So it's almost like, yes, it's to a certain extent directly impacting one player and not everybody else, but it's like as soon as you get a pile full of 4 workers, not only is that too good to let somebody have, but it's also too good to not take. Which is that's like a way to mess around with worker play with the people like me who are like, I'm uncomfortable with certain elements of stabby. So Architects of the West Kingdom had really interesting things that it was doing in that aspect. It's a game that I want to get a copy of, and they're making that available in the campaign. But anyway, check that out. Paladins of the West Kingdom. I don't know much about the new game, because it is, it's new, and that's why I'm interested in it. And that brings us to the end of this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Thank you so much for participating in the, we are now, since we finished 202, that means you can now move on to the 300 level classes in board games and actually, start taking the classes that'll count towards your board gaming major. But thanks for joining us for 202 episodes, for getting through the intermediates, and hope you have a great week of gaming. Catch us next week here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.